My name is Oliver Bryant, and this is my Week 7 assignment for FTT 100, Introduction to Firearms. For this assignment, you wanted us to demonstrate the cycle of operations with a firearm of our choosing, and today I choose my PSA. This is a dagger full size, chambered in 9mm. It's a striker-fired handgun, and this is what I'll be demonstrating with. This is a dummy cartridge. This is a dummy 9mm that SDI sent me for my ballistics class, but I'm doubling it for this. First off, we're going to make sure the gun is clear. So feed source is empty, along with the action. I will visually and physically check to make sure there's nothing in there, nothing hiding, and then put the slide home. So for the demonstration of the 8 cycle of operation steps, I will load. This is the dummy round. I'll be putting it to the feed source, and starting with the first cycle of operation, which would be feeding. You're going to rack the slide back, and as you can see in there, that puts the bullet right in line for the feed ramp and the cylinder, or the barrel. Once the slide is released, the slide will pick up that bullet, push it up the feed ramp, and then start chambering the round, which is when we go into the next step, chambering. Once it gets it into the chamber, the head spacing of the case will seat it properly, and then we'll have the locking stage, which, as you can see, the top of the slide moves up. That's your locking stage. So then after the locking, you will pull your trigger, and this is the firing stage. You will hear a click. Nothing happens. So I will remove the magazine, and then you're going to have the unlocking, which is, again, you can see the slide. Oh, went a little too far. Unlocked right there. So then you're going to have your extracting step, and that is when the extractor arm is actually pulling off the rim of the case. As you can see, it pulls it backwards. And then you're going to have the ejecting stage. And ejecting is when the ejector rod hits against the back of the case on the bottom left side of the case, and the extractor arm's on the middle right. And that will force the case up and out, like so. And then you'll have your cocking step. I forgot to demonstrate that. So cocking step is when slide is all the way back, and you'll see my trigger reset. And that is when it re-engages your sear, and your trigger is ready to shoot again, or pull again. So again, this firearm is clear. I will set the dummy round on frame just so it doesn't get mixed up if there's a confusion, that there's different ammo on the table. This firearm is clear. And for step 2, you wanted us to go ahead and field strip the gun. So with this, there are no safeties except for the trigger safety on this firearm. So with that, you have to unlock, and again, this firearm is clear, visually and physically check. There's no ammunition. I will push on the front to unlock. Push down. I have little takedown levers right here. Push down on those. Release slide. Pull the trigger. Everything comes out nice and easy. So I'll set everything on frame, and I'll start with the slide. So I just cleaned this firearm a couple days ago, so it's not exactly dirty, but I'll do it again for the sake of it. This is your recoil rod and spring. And with this having a threaded barrel, I have to take off the thread protector for it to fit through the slide. Set that there. Take out my barrel. And then I have my slide assembly. And then with the frame, I'm not going to be taking out any of the striker assemblies or trigger assemblies, just to keep it easier to fit on one video. For starting off, I'll go ahead and get my gloves on. I'll probably just edit this out because it's going to take more time than they wanted. And since we'll be using solvents, I'll also have a pair of safety glasses on. So I guess we'll go ahead and we'll start with the barrel. So with the barrel, I'll take my Otis cleaning kit that you guys sent me. I'll have a patch on the end, and I'll take a little bit of carbon destroyer. And a little bit of solution usually goes a long way, so I'll just a tiny little bit on there. And when you clean a firearm, you want to go from breech to muzzle. So go into where the round is usually fed into. Take my tab here. And I will pull the patch through. Came out a little bit dirty, but not too bad. So I'll go ahead and I'll go through another pass. It's not too bad. So I'll go ahead and take off this patch. Grab another patch. And I will repeat this step with a dry patch just to get out any of the solution that's in there, in case, if anything's highly corrosive, it could deteriorate my barrel or oxidize the metal as in my barrel. Fold the patch over nicely. I'll run it through again, breech to muzzle. Get it a little dirty again. So I'm going to go ahead, put a little more carbon destroyer on this, and run it through again. Okay, so now you can see the barrel is nice and shiny, nice and clean. All the way through, there's no burrs, there's no cross-threading, nothing is faulty with it, everything's looking pretty good. So I will go ahead and take another patch, clean dry patch, run it through, and just try to pull up as much as that carbon destroyer as I can. And then I will take another patch after this one, another clean patch, and I'll more than likely run it through with a little bit of accuracy oil from Modern Spartan Systems. Fogging up a little bit. And the last patch, like I said earlier, I'll put a little bit of accuracy oil on it and run it through. As you can see, it's a nice, clean oil barrel. And now the outside of this barrel is still clean from last time I checked it. So we'll set that aside. I'll go ahead and take off this last little cotton swab, set that aside. So with the rest of the slide and the spring, I'll take a dirty rag that I've used before, and I'll go ahead and I'll just spin the spring all the way through it, just to help get off some of the oil, and I don't rub oil and carbon build up together because that will end up making a mess. And then I have two brushes here. I usually will keep a brush for anything wet if I have oil or solvent, and I have a dry brush after I dry something. I'll go ahead and just hit the whole spring all the way around and make sure that any foreign contaminants are brushed away. Now I'll go ahead and wipe it off again. And I don't have a compressor handy, so normally, you would use compressed air to help get in any tight places or anything like that. But this is still clean from the last time I did this a couple days ago. Now I'll set this aside. Now for the slide, you can see from me racking a little bit, it's moved and probably pretty much bled a little bit of oil out. So I will take my damp herb brush and I'll just go ahead and hit everything. Top and bottom of the slide. I'll hit the grooves on either side, the striker, firing pin assembly, all that. Make sure, along with where my firing pin is, I'll hit that pretty good. So help clean off as much as I can. The cleaner you keep a firearm, the longer it'll last, and the better it'll function. With some firearms needing more oil than others. And some firearms, if you put too much, it bleeds out, and that could ruin your finish, your stock, ruin a handful of different things. Take the same dirty rag again. Let's go ahead and hit where I just scrubbed. It was moving all that carbon oil around. Now I'll go ahead and I bought these wooden Q-tips. I like to keep on handy. And I'll go ahead and get my solvent to use. And I'll just go ahead and hit all these key areas where there was some carbon buildup, like on my guiding rods, the rails on either side, just to make sure I get any form of corrosive material out. You can see, even with a clean gun, you still find something. And also around my muzzle, this has a gator mouth on it, so it's more kind of like a compensator in a sense, but the threaded barrel pushes it out further, so it doesn't exactly help all that much, but you still get a little bit of carbon around the face of it. So it's just good to get that off, just so you know you don't oxidize and cause your finish on your slide to bevel up. So after I go ahead and use solvent on all these inner parts, set that aside, take the same dirty rag, just at a cleaner spot, and go ahead and wipe everything down. Then I will go ahead, set the slide aside, and go onto the frame. So with the frame also still being clean, as you can see, striker assembly. I'm not going to be taking out the striker assembly or the mag release or anything like that, just a field stripping clean. I will go ahead and wipe off any extra oils that I see that may have moved around. I'll get the same brush where everything is wet, trigger assembly. Then I'll get my dry brush where my striker assembly is. I'll just make sure everything is loosened. Should come off pretty easy. So, that being aside, I'll grab another one of these Q-tips, dip it into my solvent, and I'll just go into these little recessed areas where the blast from the round, the gases, some gases do leak after you fire, so I just make sure I get around my trigger arm, over here by the striker assembly, just touching the ejector a little bit. Make sure everything is nice, cleaned. You can see still got a little bit off of that, but not much. I'll take a clean one, just because there are recessed areas. I don't want the solvent to sit either, because that is also corrosive. And I'll go through and I'll just wipe up these recessed areas, just to help give the longevity of this firearm. So, still get a little bit off each time. And then I'll go ahead and wipe it with the same rag, but in a different spot. And for the final step is going to be the oiling and reassembly. So I'll go ahead and just cover the solvent just so I don't bump that and have that go everywhere. And then I will get my Lucas oil, and I will go ahead and on my guide rails here, I have 4 of them. I'll put a little drop on each one just to help reduce the wear. I usually put a drop on top of my ejector rail or guide. And then on this little spring down here for your striker, I put a little bit of oil on that because I took all the oil away when I used the solvent on it. And then for the slide, I'll go ahead and put a little on this guide rail. Just tiny little drops. That's all you really need. It'll work in. And I usually put 1 drop on either side of this rail system just to keep it a little smoother and just help mitigate any wear and heat. So then with the reassembly, I'll go ahead and reverse everything that I did. I'll put the barrel back into the slide. Seats in there properly. I'll put my thread protector back on it so I don't forget it and you'll end up bumping it, damaging a thread. Then I will take my ejecting or recoil spring and guide rod. And then to reassemble, you just have to guide up your slide rails. And locks back in place. So after I disassemble a firearm and reassemble a firearm, I always like to test and make sure that all of the safeties on the firearm are still functional. But I always take a clean microfiber cloth afterwards, and I'll just wipe everything down in case any oil bleeds. So it looks pretty good. So then I will go ahead, put the empty magazine back in, make sure that locks back and I'm not manipulating. It's only a single-sided takedown or slide release, nothing on this side. So I'll remove the magazine, make the slide go forward, disengage the release. Now I'll make sure my trigger safety works. I'll try pulling on the trigger without using the trigger safety, and it stops it. So I'll shoot, pull the trigger, visually, physically inspect it. There's nothing in there. Fire, Click, and I'll make sure my trigger resets, which it does. So, all in all, I believe this firearm is fully functional once again, and I'll have to take it out to shoot it to fully test it. Thank you, and goodbye.